But speaking of now bombing, right? You've mentioned it a lot. It's something that a lot of people like myself have heard of. We all know what it's like to bomb in life, but the bomb on stage, to not have a joke hit. We've been through that. I've been through that when I tell a joke with friends and no one laughs. How do you deal with negativity, man? And how do you deal with, I should mention, really woke culture, like the society we're in, the political views? Like, how do you overcome that in your style of content?
Yeah. I mean, dialing like relating it back to like the family values and everything. Part of me is like, because I'm so close with my family, with my fiance, her family, everybody.
Right.
Part of me doesn't like, I don't get that like satisfaction over shock comedy
Yeah.
or like satisfaction from like treading a line that's like on topics that we don't want to talk about because it could potentially like I can appreciate when somebody does that really artistically, but then there are people that are doing so ignorantly or doing so, and it's just like like I don't feel like it's as bad as everyone's made it out to be, as far as like, oh, you freedom of speech, you can't say anything these days. I don't think it's that bad. I think of the last 10 years right now is the best it's been, because we're all coming out of a pandemic. There are actual wars going on. Not to say that there weren't already, but there's
Yeah.
one in our face
Yeah.
that we're all paying attention to. The pandemic, like fucking really, dude, like,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
people, yeah, it's like we're growing, things evolve, and language evolves, perspectives evolve. We learn as humans about each other's experiences and we share them. And like, to say, oh, I say some shit and then someone reacts like this, it's just like A plus B equals C. Like, I don't know what people are mad at. If you say things that are offensive, some people will get offended. Some people
Yeah.
will come at you.
Mhm.
It is a fact of life. It's what we do. And the craft of stand-up comedy, the craft of this type of speaking that we do, is figuring out how to dance through these topics, portray opinions, portray perspectives, while using this comedy to break the gas on a situation and flip it back on our own ego. So in short, just get better. Like,
Yeah. But no.
if a joke bombs, then
Yeah.
get better. Yeah, there is the odd time that it's the audience's fault, but it almost never serves you as a comedian to blame the audience. The audience is not in your control.
I
You are
like
in
that.
your own control.
Yep.
So there's no sense thinking it's the audience all the time, because you won't actually reflect on yourself and reflect on the empathy that's required to understand why someone might get upset by all this.
Yeah.
And this is like a shaping perspective that I'm continuing to like grow and develop and learn. Like, I'm not perfect. I've
Hmm.
said things on stage that I cringe at now and I think
Oh,
about it
okay.
back then,
Have
like,
you ever lashed? Just interject. Have you ever lashed out at the audience or no?
not like lashed out. I have felt animosity build up inside my body
Like,
during the
has it ever
set.
been personal? Like comedians where like they start insulting the person heckling. Like, I'm just curious, if being human, like a human being, do you ever like does it ever get to that point?
Well, I mean, I used to do this show that used to happen in Toronto every Sunday. It was called The Danger Room. And it
Okay.
was the whole premise of the show was to be the worst show possible
Okay.
and provide the worst situation for a comedian to try and go perform. They would actively encourage heckling. The best heckle would get a free beer. It was fun. It was turbulent. It was a roller coaster. You'd have some of the biggest, craziest moments, and then some of the deepest lows where everything feels like it's shot. And so I had some, and that was honestly, you couldn't do that every week because I was doing it every week, and like it actually made you like depressed.
Oh yeah,
Like,
100%. I was just gonna say, how was
like,
your mental health? Yeah.
yeah, like it messes you up. But I had some of my like worst sets, some really good sets there. And that those gears that I built in that room of learning how to deal when everything is going against you has helped me just provide a professional show and get paid properly on shows that like have not gone that well outside of the cities. Like, sometimes you're running into a situation where people are heckling, people don't give a shit about the show. The bar owner thought it'd be a good idea, but none of the audio is done properly and half the people can't hear, so they're just all talking. And you got to like hit this gear of figuring out how to have we call it a hell gig in the business. And you got to learn how to like hit that gear of like how to show the crowd you're having a good time with the situation in front of you for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like, yeah, I've had those situations. And it's been like the last time I got like animosity building up in the crowd or towards the crowd. You learn how to mask it, but also it's just like one of those things where you're like, fuck, I'm still learning, even like, especially when things are not stacked for me, most comedy shows you go to in a city, in a comedy club, everything is going your way. People walked in, they got checked in. The guy who checked them in told them to turn off their phones, told them not to heckle. They got seated. If they heckled, then somebody comes up, they go, "Excuse me, you can't do that."
Yeah.
And then you continue your thing. You flip the audience onto them. It's easy, it's fun, it's good. But then you go to these small towns sometimes. No one's been to a comedy show. They're just at the bar they drink at all the time. The dude who's yelling at you is having sex with the bartender, and his name's Jim, and he drinks there 7 days a week. So do you think they're going to kick Jim out?
No.
Okay. No. Now you've got to leap the hurdle of Jim while you try and do your jokes. And you might be like, oh, I got 45 minutes of jokes. Well, guess what? Every single one is getting cut in half because Jim won't shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
So like, then you got those situations, which can be extremely fun. Don't get me wrong. But then the odd time, you really have to make it look like you're having fun. And
well, I was just going to say, it toughens you up, right? It kind of, obviously you don't want to go to a point where your mental health is in jeopardy, but it reminds me actually of, like, again, I listen to Joe Rogan a lot, and Joey Diaz, another favorite comedian of mine, was on the podcast, and he was explaining how even though he made it to where his success to where he is now, he still goes to those kinds of bars you're explaining, because it humbles him, but it also reminds him like that he needs to still work at his craft, right? It kind of like makes him develop that resilience and also give him his edge still, right? Because there's such a thing as softening up too much, right? If you have people around you, like you said, I've been to those venues too. Sir, turn your phone off. Sir, you can't speak loudly. Sir, shh, when the performance is on. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, this is, of course, you got to be respectful. At the end of the day, it's a performance, whatever. But I'm thinking to myself, especially for a comedian that lives off of that, volatility, right? Like, you need that sometimes in your life, because imagine if you were coddled that way, like conditioned the whole time, and then that speaker was acting up. You would probably turn red and say, I don't know, guys, I don't know what to do every time I speak. It, like, I'm not saying you directly, but you get my point, right? It's like, you can't be too conditioned that everything is working smoothly for you. You have to kind of deal with that adversity.